Michael, I want to start with you. White House damage control here. Pretty interesting to see it play out. Is what Democrats are saying publicly different than what they're saying privately about the president?
I think the White House and the campaign has lost a lot of goodwill with the media and with the American public because of the way that they've handled the last week. We all know what we saw at the presidential debate. His performance was awful. But in the last week, they've gone further and they've antagonized and gaslit a lot of Democrats and a lot of people in the media by calling them bedwetters and saying that people are panicking. Look, the president has an amazing record to run on, but if he can't articulate that case, if he can't make the best case for himself, then there's got to be a change. That conversation is a conversation that needs to be had. And while it may upset a lot of Democrats and a lot of Biden campaign members, it's something that has to be done.
Niall, let's bring you in here. Overprepared for the debate. That was some of the criticism that even Biden's camp said he was tired, he wasn't ready for the debate. You've got this ABC primetime interview happening tomorrow with George Stephanopoulos. Biden is getting ready for it now. Make or break?
Yeah, it's a huge moment, Marnie. There's no question about that. The president has to provide some level of reassurance, not just to elected Democrats, but to Democratic voters, that he's capable of articulating his positions, defending his positions, responding to questions, in the moment. All of those things failed in the debate. I don't frankly buy the argument that he was over-prepared. I mean, that just doesn't seem to ring true to me when you look at what actually happened. The problem was his performance was so meandering that it raised more fears about his mental acuity.
The balancing act right now that the White House has to play with this president. How unique is this situation, Michael, and how do they do this, and how much time do they have left to get it right?
There's nothing really that the White House or the campaign at this point can do to convince voters. Voters know who Biden is from his record. And in many ways, they're not voting for Biden. They're voting against Trump. So the big worry is that you have independent voters and young voters who aren't really party affiliated stay home. The only thing that Democrats can really do at this point is talk about messaging and talk about the fact that this is bigger than just Joe Biden. This is about whether or not we have reproductive freedom. This is about whether Project 2025 becomes the law of the land. The more that we focus on Joe Biden's health, the more likely it is that Democrats lose.
Talk about the First Lady's influence here, Niall. Is she the most important person that the president is listening to on his future?
Oh, yes, I would think so. Some would say, as it should be, that one's spouse should be the most important person. But, I think the broader point here, Marnie, is that the president is a very proud man. He believes in some ways that he has not been accorded the respect he deserves at various points in his political career. That diminishes the leverage that, say, someone like former President Obama would have in trying to nudge Biden toward the exit. So, yes, Jill Biden, the First Lady, is the key voice there. I don't think there's any question about that.
Michael, the new poll from the New York Times has Trump leading Biden by 8 points among young voters. We're talking 18 to 29 years old. How significant is that?
It's really, I think, a death knell towards his argument that he can get reelected. The whole argument and case for Joe Biden's election and reelection was that he was somebody who could bring the country together, that he could coalesce and defeat Trump. Well, given the polling numbers and the shifts, it looks like he's not going to be able to cross that finish line. And if he can't cross that finish line and beat Donald Trump, then the party has to make a decision quickly. This isn't something we can sit around and have conjecture about. A decision has to be made. And Joe Biden really has to ask himself the honest question. Is he willing to have his legacy be that he stopped Trump twice and put country first, or that he put his own interest before the country's?
Yeah, I guess the other question, too, and Niall, I'll present this to you, a fair question for Biden. Why do you want to stay in the race? Is it ego? Is it duty? Is it I don't like Trump and don't want to see him there? Is it all of the above?
Well, I think it is a large number of those things. But, the question gets at a really important point, Marnie. Do Democrats generally think that President Biden is the best standard bearer they could have against former President Trump. Now, President Biden might think he is, but obviously that debate put the question massively in doubt. That's why we're having this whole discussion about potentially replacing him. That was not a plausible scenario 10 days ago. Now it is, and that's because even someone like, say, Vice President Harris, who has her own political vulnerabilities, suddenly seems to many Democrats a stronger carrier of the Democratic message than the 81-year-old incumbent president.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.